welcome to How to Disaster. I'm so excited to share this episode with you. We have Jen Goodlin from Rebuild Paradise Foundation and Valerie Brown, who works with us at After the Fire. She's an SBP fellow and a subject matter expert. Valerie's been in this field since 2007 when her own community was affected by a mega fire. And Jen Goodlin grew up in Paradise and returned after the campfire so that she could help them rebuild. I wanted these two really strong, smart women to be on the podcast together because a lot of what they're tackling together are issues of insurance. Valerie is definitely an insurance expert, and Jen's been walking in her own community about how do you get people home when even when they do wildfire prepared homes, for some reason they were not getting the insurance that they needed. Both of these leaders are leaning into how do we actually granularly do this on the ground. They're innovating. They're working together on a toolkit for After the Fire that will come out in June. And I wanted to get them together to talk about insurance, what's possible, and also some of the challenges around leadership. Jen's in a small town. How does that look the same for like Valerie, who's actually been to multiple disasters over 18 years? What are the things that unite us as leaders? And what are some of the challenges that we have? Thank you for joining us once again on How to Disaster. Okay, Jen Goodlin and Valerie Brown, I am so happy that you're here with me today on How to Disaster.
Thank you for having us.
So glad to be here. Thanks, Jen.
I love having a lot of Jens in my life too, so I'm not upset about that. So something special about Jen and Valerie is that we all work together through different organizations, but lately we've been bringing Jen a lot on our travels. The area where we have so much intersection is a lot around insurance and also lifting barriers around insurance, navigating recovery so that when people get all the way home, they can actually afford their lives after. And one of the things that I like so much about working with Val and Jen is that they have such a depth of experience at actually moving the needle. But I'm going to start with you, Val, first, because you have such a long history in this space. And so if you don't mind giving some of your background and all of your many, many hats so that the audience understands just what a gem you are.
Well, thank you for that intro. So I started with disaster in 2007 when my neighborhood in San Diego burned from the Witch Creek fire. And luckily or unluckily for most of my neighbors, they were insured, which we thought was going to make them whole and help them get home faster. But it actually was a real challenge to get paid what they were owed to move forward and get back home. And then that was the year in California that the Wildland Urban Interface 7A code came in. And that applied to everyone except one home that rebuilt in the 2 months before the new law took effect. And that really created a barrier for people coming home because suddenly you had to be doing all of these things to protect your home from future wildfires. And so having an interest in that space, because that was the pain point for so much of my community, had kept volunteering in San Diego, working with United Policyholders as a volunteer, and then later as their deputy executive director for 5 years to help move people forward in this space. And it's, you would think we treat insurance like it's a utility bill, right? We pay the bill, we expect to get paid. You turn that light switch on and off, and it doesn't work that way. It's very challenging, and especially with the insurance crisis that we've had in the West and definitely in California the last couple of years, it just makes it really challenging to get people home. And then, as you said, be able to afford to live later.
Exactly. And so tell us what you're doing now.
Yes, so now I am After the Fire subject matter expert, a California Resilience Fellow. I work with SBP as their subject matter expert, and I'm also the California VOAD chair, so Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, which means I put a lot of time into supporting different entities throughout the state in preparing for disasters and then recovering from them.
Thank you. We are so fortunate to have you. It was a beautiful day in our lives, and you actually onboarded, and it was the day before the LA fires, and we've been go, go, go ever since. So I'm also really happy to have Jen Goodlin here, and she's the executive director of Rebuild Paradise Foundation. I'm jumping the gun because she could have told you that for sure. But Jen, can you tell us how you came to the space of disaster, your work in Paradise, and also touch on the insurance piece of it too, which what you've been doing, really moving the needle and innovating in a way that I've not seen anybody else do in this space.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, I'm the director of Rebuild Paradise Foundation in Paradise, California, where we had the campfire. I got into this space because I love my town and community and wanted to help. And the best way to help is to live in the space that you want to help. So I moved from Colorado Springs to Paradise in 2020 in the middle of COVID. I was not a campfire victim, but I deeply lost my community that I love and wanted to serve them. And I stepped into a world that I didn't know how hard it was until I was in it myself. So I just started helping in any capacity that I could. And that led to me meeting Charles Brooks, the founder of Rebuild Paradise, who really gave an open opportunity for me to become the director as he moved on in his journey. And a board that believed in my vision and ideas that were a little bit unconventional. And that's kind of how I landed here. It has been an honor to serve in this capacity in every way. It's very much a passion job. And I remember when I started at Rebuild Paradise, Charles had already laid some groundwork for insurance at the beginning. He recognized its obstacle. And I remember thinking, I'm not doing that. Like, I want nothing to do with insurance. This is beyond my mind. Like, this is just way beyond me. And I'm going to tell you right now, you should never say you're not going to do something.
I said I was never going to run a nonprofit. So here I am.
That's
I
usually
literally
how it
said
works.
that. Mm-hmm.
Later. Yes.
Yep.
Yep, that's so true. Well, one of the things that I remember when Charles was deciding to leave Rebuild Paradise Foundation and to do other things, and when he had choices, and he actually chose Jen specifically because he felt like she had the heart for it. And I think that that's so important in the work that we do, that you have the heart for it. I'm sure you've exceeded his expectations because you've also brought the innovation and curiosity to it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I would say in the journey, what led to insurance is that our foundation has always ebbed and flowed to the needs our community has during our recovery. So the needs we had were different in the beginning than they are now. And Rebuild Paradise was always able to accommodate, flex, and change as our needs change. So we went from like septic tanks and master floor plan libraries to a handprint mural all the way over to insurance because it was meeting a need where there was a massive void. We were having insurance policies increased by about 600%. And for someone who's done everything to return home, spent every last dollar to get home and then not be able to afford their home because of insurance, it was extraordinarily devastating. And it was not okay. In my mind, it wasn't okay. So that's when we began the fight because it was my neighbor, it was me personally, it was my friend. Like, we have worked too hard and gone too far for insurance to really boot us out of all of our hard work. So we inserted ourselves into a world based on a passion for our community, and we were able to see the needs because we live them. And so we found where there was a gap where insurance wasn't recognizing our hard work. And in that gap, we created a grant program that helps people create defensible space for Zone Zero. We drug an insurance company into our community so they could use their eyes to see what we had done rather than a computer telling it what we had done. It's like it's just circling back to it's humans and people, where we live in a very digital world, and that's great in many ways, and in some ways it's failed us to an extent. So people can't see for themselves the hard work we've done. With our grant program and bringing insurance companies, multiple, we've been able to get people off of the California Fair Plan onto standard, more affordable policies, and really kind of shifted this dynamic, not just for Paradise, but our hope is really for many fire-impacted communities, many high fire zones.
So in our case, like, our fires were 13 months ahead of you. So we were in October of 2017. You were November of 2018. Valerie, you have seen huge changes in the market and been through a lot of these mega fires and really seen the era of mega fire ramp up dramatically since 2015. Can you talk about some of your observations, frustrations, and hopes around that?
Yeah. So from '07 on, we would see these little blips of insurance costs would increase and then everybody would settle down and the market would settle down, right? And really it's at 2015 that we saw the mega fire era really begin. And it was a game changer. You had pine trees across the state dying. So you had lots of fuel available. We had our droughts going on. It just seemed like this perfect swarm of influences that were tightening up the market. And then we started having our mega fires and no break, right? We had 17 to, Southern California, Northern California burning, 18, the same thing. 19 was just Southern California. And, it gave us just a chance to catch our breath before 2020 and of 38 counties impacted by lightning strike fires across the state. Over half the state had burned. And it really did. It took the California Fair Plan, that insurer of last resort, and stressed them to the max. They were not made to have hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of cases, right? They're not made for that. They're for people searching, and yet it became the only recourse for so many people. Limited coverage, just not covering what you need per se. And as Jen alluded to, the multiplying of the prices. People are getting priced out of the market and going bare because they can't afford it.
Nope.
And mortgages dropping and people not able to sell homes. I mean, the market is just so topsy-turvy right now. And for all that the state and the governor and everyone are doing to right size it to put us back on a good trajectory, it's not happening now. We're in a very messy middle.
Actually, I interviewed Ralph Flumers too, Jen, and you guys had just been on the phone, which was nice. And we love how much he is highlighting all of your great work. And so super appreciate that. In the case of one of the things I'd like people to understand about Paradise is that these are homes now. What's your average home? Like 500,000?
Around 400,000, yes.
Okay, around 400,000, definitely more expensive than before the fires, but also you are essentially building a town, and it's very impressive, all the work that's been done by the people who love Paradise so much. But I think that's one of the reasons why I want people to understand how high the insurance bills were. So can you talk about really IBHS being in your town, and Casey Taylor, who's on your board, has the first IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home certified, and then how it started taking root and exactly what was the problem that you identified? Because you've alluded to the barrier that you have sort of removed to move the needle, but I want it to be really explicit for people so that they can also understand how much creativity is required in this work.
Like you said, we are rebuilding a whole town. So we have over 3,000 newly constructed homes, and they are all built to Chapter 7A. They are what IBHS wants to see for their wildfire prepared home certificate. They're what, an insurance company honestly wants to see is that we're building to this code. And so we have all these homes being built to this code, and yet we have such a low amount of IBHS wildfire prepared home certificates. We had somewhere around 50 with all this brand new construction, and that did not make sense in my mind. So I asked IBHS, what is the barrier? Why are people not getting their certificate in Paradise? Help me understand. And they said most people don't get the certificate because they fail at zone 0. They have combustible things next to their home, and that's what's booting them out from getting this. So that's when we decided, what if we create the resource to get people to the finish line? Their home is already constructed how IBHS wants it to be, and this is the last step. So that's when we created our defensible space gravel grant, which gives homeowners gravel to put around that perimeter of their home to create zone 0. Compliance goes through the roof when you give people a direct resource. And we also know fire doesn't pick which home it's going to burn down. So this resource is available to anyone in our community. And it's so small. It started as a $500 voucher that, and we support our local aggregate company, North State Aggregate. They produce all the gravel, and we pay them directly. So when we launched this program in May of 2024, we were slammed. immediately. People at our door wanting this, not quite sure what it was. Sometimes people thought it was for their driveway. And we had major insurance companies sending people to us because it went from a discount to maybe having the IBHS certificate to a requirement. And this shift we could not have predicted happening. It just was simultaneous to our release of our program. So we ran out of money really, really fast. We had to beg, plead, scrape, do all the things because we knew it was the right idea. But in all of this, we also have the very first wildfire prepared home in Paradise, the very first wildfire prepared home plus, and we have two of them in our community, 2+ homes, the very first in all of the galaxy. And all three are on the California Fair Plan. And in my mind, this is just like, it's just a terrible example. Who wants to do all this work and then be on the Fair Plan? Like, this doesn't make sense. Terrible marketing. Like, everything about this feels wrong. And it's not motivating to anybody. Like, Jen, do you want to, spend all this money and then, oh, well, like, you're stuck on Fair Plan? Like, so
Yeah, nobody wants that.
No, nobody wants that, and it doesn't instigate any type of change. So when we started bringing insurance companies into Paradise, those were the first homes we showed them because we needed to change what was happening, especially with the homeowners working the hardest. We needed to show that there was impact on their insurance policies, both getting a standard policy and having a much more affordable rate for the hard work that they had done. And once an insurance company, it was Mercury, saw these homes, it was an immediate, that day, offered insurance policy because it was so glaringly obvious. Like, if change can't happen in this town with the whole town doing everything, where is it going to change?
I totally appreciate that. And the fact that you invited them up there to actually see it. And it wasn't just, too often we, as human beings, we just are presented with problems and then we don't think about the solution on the other side, or it can just get so frustrating. And if you don't feel like you have permission in this way to actually solve for the crisis, because you're like, well, insurance companies, they would definitely know, but they don't definitely know what the basic solution could be. They know that they are definitely presented with a problem instead. So, Valerie, you've been in the insurance space, but also just in the disaster space for so long, like 18 years. And you are also a subject matter expert for SBP. You are embedded with After the Fire under a fellowship there, but you're also their subject matter expert. What do you see changing when you go to other places in the country, especially as a subject matter expert for their fellows program? What kind of questions do people have about megafires, or what do they understand or not understand?
Well, I would argue they don't understand the limitations of insurance, right? And in the Western states, we've been very proactive to keep certain elements in there or increase coverage. And so in Oregon and Colorado and in California, there's now legislation that gives you longer to recover, because with a mega fire, as Jen described, it's the infrastructure is gone, the city might be gone. Everything is gone. And it takes longer than a 12-month standard policy for that to work. I'm in North Carolina today. The entire state is 100 counties are under a no burn ban. They are absolutely terrified. And there have been 3 fires in 3 different counties in the last 12 hours. And they are
And they had fires last year.
They had fires last year, after Hurricane Helene, followed up with fires. And I think with the way weather has shifted, people are understanding that their hazards have changed a bit, and those risks have definitely increased. And wildfire is one, the Western states are more familiar with it. It happens anywhere, quite honestly. The Great Dismal Swamp was burning the year after my fire. I went to visit my in-laws in Virginia, and I smelled smoke and I saw all the vegetation, and I got really upset and nervous and triggered. And it's like, oh, it's the Great Dismal Swamp is burning. It's fine. And like, you have wind. No, it's not fine. You're a little nervous about it. And yet, people they don't know what they don't know about wildfire. And so um, insurance.
But can you make sure that the whole this, if you could touch upon for me, because I love this subject, that most of the time what we're really well versed in is wind and rain and not mega
Yes.
fires, because it's when they've occurred, it hasn't been an ongoing crisis except for the last decade, and they've
Right.
increased over 250%. And so I found myself often feeling lonely at these bigger national conventions, and you are a big participant in national VOAD. And so, but I felt like mega fires were not on the radar of people really until Maui, somewhat LA. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think the assumption is they're a one-off, right? You're going to have one and it's done, and you don't have to worry about it again. And most of the country treats them that way. And yet, Alaska, Canada, Oklahoma, all of these places burning, and they're not, and people, they're used to the tornadoes, they're used to the hurricanes, they're used to wind, they're used to flooding, and that's the type of insurance they're focusing on, and they don't realize that there are gaps in that safety net of insurance when you're dealing with wildfires. And when you're looking at insurance, just to be blunt, it's not made for a total catastrophic loss. It's made for, if you're looking at fire, it's made for a kitchen fire. Your home might burn, but there's still part of it standing, or the infrastructure below ground, your foundation is not jeopardized, right? You don't have to dig up everything. And even with hurricanes, unless your home is washed out, which, having lived in a hurricane from Florida, I had friends who lost their homes that way. It's rare to have those. Usually you're dealing with partial losses, basically. It's not the whole home. Something is still there. And yeah.
No, go ahead.
Cool. And it's for most people, they don't know how to prep and prepare for it, right? So Jen's talking about that zone zero. That was a foreign concept to me when they started rolling that out after our fire, and I think it had a different name then, but it's the same concept, right? Nothing flammable around your home, and we have this mentality of the English cottage with the matching decorative shrubs framing the door, and rosebuds, and everything, and just beautiful beside your window so you can look out. And that's where those embers during a wildfire are going to land, which are going to catch your home on fire most likely. And so we have no preparedness, no nothing.
Well, and we're trying, one of the things that we're trying to do, if you want to talk about it a little bit, and Jen, maybe you can lead this, it's taking many of us, like we had a long conversation with Ralph Bloomers about how do you make this information accessible and not feel like a punishment all the time. I also think there was a lot of confusion around the 100 feet of defensible space, right? I think that people didn't understand there's one rule if it depends on where you live, but if you're in a suburb and you're going to have, or even like a place like Paradise that had larger lots, but definitely had urban conflagration, a very hard word to say, by the way, not my favorite. But when houses become the actual fuel. So Jen, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with Val to try to sort of democratize that information? And then when we're done with that, we're going to actually shift over into the specific fire of Paradise.
Yes, so we recognize there's a big void right now in getting this information in an accessible and understandable way to the general public. Information that's out there is very lengthy, confusing, not pleasing to look at. It's just, I even knowing what I know, the information is very hard for me to read and grasp. So how would I expect my neighbor to ever read it and understand? We need to give better tools to people who live in high fire hazard zones. So in that, Val and I are creating kind of a pilot project, a toolkit, so to speak, that's going to give some of these resources back to our community so that they can better understand, first and foremost, where they live. Because if you are living in Florida, you're in a hurricane zone. If you live in Paradise, I can't tell you how many times I hear, we'll never burn down again. And that is the basis of the issue, because if you believe that to be true, why would you ever change anything that you're doing to or around your home? But if you understand where you live, the hazard it is and the way you can reduce your risk, that instigates change. But if you don't know where you live, so we're kind of, going to the root of some of these issues of the understanding of where you live and the reality of megafire, but also very practical and affordable steps a homeowner can take that are still beautiful, because there's so many myths about zone ugly and these ideas that we're xeriscaping and have no trees, and that couldn't be more opposite than the truth.
I totally agree. And it's one of the things that we're running into everywhere, but especially in LA, where there's a lot of people who they're creators and they're latching onto, and we talked about this earlier, so I'm not going to go in another podcast. I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but I don't think everyone fully understands the dynamics of the house to house to house piece of it. And I don't think that they really understand that it's not really the moment to be like the American individual, that we have to actually get through this together. So Valerie, can you actually explain some of the dynamics around why your insurability is tied to your neighbor's insurability?
Yes. So when you're looking at your property, especially in those urban centers, right? Suburban, urban areas, if you've got a 5-foot setback, you're there, you're in zone 0. And so in my fire, there were firefighters who actually saved homes from their burning next door neighbor by running up and battering the fence down that connected the two homes. It literally was burning the home, the fence, to the neighbor's fence, to the home. And so those types, your best fuel break is your neighbor's home, quite honestly, once you're in the neighborhood. It's not about that open space out. As soon as it comes into your neighborhood, the houses next to you are going to be what will burn you down. And so understanding that it has to be a collective effort, be it weeding, mitigation, swapping your fences out for, flame resistant materials, anything like that, the gravel programs, moving your plants. You can have those lovely roses, just have them 6 feet away. You'll still get that great view from your window. You can still have curb appeal, but it's not right there to catch those embers and cause flames under your eaves, which are going to end up catching your house on fire.
Here we are on a sunny Sunday afternoon in Pacific Palisades. Can you please tell me your name and where we are in the Palisades?
My name is Leela Bahadur, and we are in the Highlands.
And we're sitting in front of this amazing hill. What is the significance of that hill to our story?
The fire actually started right up on that hill, right across from my house.
That is crazy. I see the rocks. I've seen so many times.
Yeah.
And so tell me what happened to Leela on the morning of the fire.
Yeah, so around 10:30, my dad came into my room. He woke me up, and he told me that a fire had started on the hills behind my house. And at first, I don't think I had the urgency that I should have, because there have been so many fires in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I was just like, okay, it's probably just another one of those. So he said, we're going to evacuate. I packed my things, and we get in the car and go to pick up my grandma, who lives 2 minutes away. And we try to escape through Palisades Drive, but all of the cars are it's all blockaded. It's bottlenecked, so we can't get out.
Yep.
So we start driving around to just find an alternate escape route, and we come across the Michael Lane Fire Road.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hiked that so many times.
Yeah, it was a lifesaver, and we encountered this couple who they were planning to hike the fire road to escape because they didn't have a vehicle that could, drive through that. But luckily, we were in a Jeep, so we offered them a ride, and they thankfully accepted.
Because they knew the way, right?
Yeah, they knew the way. This was like, an 11-mile hike?
I've done it.
5 hours. That's,
yes.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how they were planning to do that. But yeah, so we offered them a ride, and we went through the fire road, probably took about a little over an hour.
Okay.
And then we reached the valley, I would say.
After the fires, your papa is a child psychologist, right? His name is
Yes.
Shaw. And you are not a child anymore. You're a teenager, but you decided to do what?
I wrote a children's book called Wildfires to Wildflowers.
Yeah. It's so amazing. A tale of bravery, change, and new beginnings. So I read it last night. Really, I did. It brought a tear to my eye. Your star character is Poppy,
Right.
and the squirrel's cousin is a squirrel, Fox.
Fox, yeah.
Yeah, and the fox's cousin is a firefighter named Ember. How did you think of these names?
I just okay, Ember, obviously that has to do with fire. And Poppy, I just felt that was the perfect name because it's giving like brave, clever, like upbeat, bubbly. And I just thought that was perfect for the main character.
And how did you choose the title?
The title I'm very proud of because I feel like it just rolls off your tongue. I was actually in a plane coming back from a volleyball tournament, and I was just trying to think of something catchy that is symbolic and just stays with you and just represents what the book is going to be about. So I don't really know how I came up with it, but it just kind of clicked. And when it did, I was like, that's perfect.
Yeah, and some of the phrases you use just really make me, stop and think. After my favorite is the next day, the sky was gray and gloomy after the fire. Ash fell like sleepy snow. The forest was destroyed.
Yeah.
And how did that line hit you? How did you think of that?
Okay, so although this is a children's book, I still wanted to include some figurative language sort of thing just to add to it and make it more like a lyrical kind of story. And I think that line really symbolizes and represents how dull and dead it seemed after the fires. And I just really wanted to highlight that.
Yeah. And, Poppy was a person that watched out for fires or an animal in the forest and changed his job at the end.
Her job, yeah.
Her job. What was her job at the end?
Her job was to help people overcome like scary things and just, she was helping her friends just overcome difficult situations
and get used to change.
Yeah, get used to change, yeah.
I mean, how did the other line, being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. And you caught that she sat down in silence, feeling shocked, scared, and empty. Did you feel that way when you saw your
100%.
Uh-huh.
Even more. Like words can't even describe how I felt. It was just, yeah.
And driving up here, my husband and I have been up on the street. We've hiked, we've, walked the dog so many times. And we just like, why are all those houses gone? And then we came to your section, all these houses are here. My house is there. How does that make us feel?
Like a sense of guilt, definitely, because, a lot of my friends, their house is burned and it's just mine is still up. Like, obviously, I'm so grateful and it is a miracle, but there's definitely a sense of guilt there because of that.
So how does this book help you with your sense of guilt?
I think writing this book really it was a way for me to cope. Obviously, I wrote it to help young children cope, but along the way, it helped me cope. I kept a journal throughout this whole experience. So technically I had all of my ideas already written down, which made writing this book really easily. So I think that was a big part.
Yeah. And the illustrations, you admit that they were helped by
Yeah.
How did that happen? So
okay.
cute.
Well, yeah, because obviously getting an illustrator would be a lot of time and money. And I think we have the tools, so why not use them? It was much easier. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And they really do get the point across. And in the back, you have interactive pages.
Right.
Can you tell me about them?
Yeah, so my dad actually helped me with these because he's a psychologist and he put his skills to the test and just gave children kind of a way, just like, for example, there's drawing and children love to draw. So it's kind of an indirect way for them to express what they're feeling and what they remember from that day. Or just drawing a simple wildflower,
That's right.
Yeah.
And understanding how fires can also rejuvenate life.
Exactly,
in
a positive lens.
And also, I love that you have support strategies for parents and educators.
Yeah.
Now, Lily, you go to Pali High. Let's explain to our listeners, what's the situation at Pali High?
So basically, we are at a Sears building. I'm in a department store in Santa Monica. We've been there since April of last school year, and we're planning to return to Pali in January of 2026, hopefully.
So you went back, you were on Zoom a little bit,
yes,
and then you went to an empty Sears building in April after the fire, a few months later.
Yes.
And it's not in Palisades, it's in Santa Monica, right? How do you think the kids feel in general about it?
I think initially it was definitely a change because it was so crowded. Like we were going to school in basically what used to be a mall. And the classrooms were all wonky and it was just not figured out.
And
It
the
was,
bathrooms are out.
yeah, the bathrooms, yeah,
parking lot.
exactly. It was just our lunch area, our cafeteria was in a parking lot, so it was definitely a change. But I personally have adapted a lot to it. I've gotten used to it. Obviously, I prefer the Pali campus near the beach. It's so beautiful, but I've adapted, I would say.
Yeah, and really, you guys are so equipped. You're the same people that went through COVID. It's
Yeah,
just sort of crazy.
our generation has been through so much. It is.
And what do you think? How do you think that will inform your generation growing up? What will these two experiences, how will that change you, do you think?
I think that a positive way to look at this is that all of these hardships and adverse experiences, they shape who we become and they build our character and make us stronger as individuals, but also as a community. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and you come together. Together you can overcome things.
Yeah.
What do you and your friends feel about the dangers of climate change?
Actually, I'm taking AP Environmental Science this year.
Yay,
So
help us.
yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the class so far. It's definitely difficult, but so I'm learning a lot more about that. I mean, I wouldn't really say anything in particular that we like discuss about with my friends, but it's good to like start learning about that stuff because
Yeah.
it's so important.
It's our future. And you and I have lived in the Palisades, have you, all your life?
Yeah.
Us for me 30 years. We've seen fires every couple of years, but nothing
Nothing
this
like
fire
this, yeah.
hurricane ever. No
Exactly.
one believed it, right?
Yeah. I didn't think it was real. It felt like a dream.
It felt like a really bad movie.
Yeah.
Now let me know too how you'd like to distribute this book. What are your plans for getting this into the hands of
Yeah.
kids?
So I think this podcast is a really good way to just, disperse it within the community. But also I want to, at my school, like put up a table and just basically tell people about it and show my classmates and hopefully they'll buy it and just spread the word. And because this is going to a good cause, so it's, I don't see why people wouldn't buy it.
I don't either. And share
Yeah.
it with their little siblings or anybody they know who's been through it. A lot of little kids, their rooms burned down.
Yeah.
Their trophies for soccer, their baby pictures, their stuffed animals. I mean, these are things that stay with you. I'm
Exactly.
a grown person and today I went to reach for my potato
Yeah.
masher and my mixer. And I was like, oh, my beautiful mixer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they get smoke damage, so they're gone. So we all need to help each other. And Leela, I am so impressed. I love
Thank
this book.
you.
Don't make me cry because I've been doing that a lot lately. But congrats on
Thank you
putting
so
your
much.
heart where your mouth is, putting your experience to good work, and we'll help you spread the word, okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you
Website
for
will
having
be in the
me.
show notes, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
To your memorable backyard.
So, Jen, people are going to be curious about the campfire and where is it? And to be clear, the campfire is not the only fire that has visited itself upon your area. You've had the devastating Park Fire, I think a year or two ago. And then we also had the Dixie Fire, which sort of started in this same place as the campfire. But for many people, including us, like we thought we were the belle of the ball nobody wants to go to. With losing 8,900 structures across 4 counties. But then the campfire happened, and all of a sudden we're at 18,000 across the campfire, plus 85 people perished. You grew up in Paradise, and then you made this sort of remarkable decision to do what a lot of people would not have done, which is to go live in a trailer and build. Can you talk about what you've learned during this time, which is a lot, I'm sure, but also like I like the fact that we're having innovation also originating in Paradise, a place that, well, why don't you describe Paradise before the fires, Paradise when you got there, and Paradise today?
Yeah, that's it's very hard for people to understand the magnitude. It's extremely hard. Paradise was essentially a massive forest with homes plopped in it. That's the best way to describe it. Beautiful. But millions,
and up on a
millions of
ridge.
trees. We're up on a ridge. We're 6 miles wide. And on one side of our ridge, we have what's called Jarbo Gap winds. And on top of that, we are a Mediterranean climate. We get a large amount of rain in the winter months and moisture and heavy growth and dry in the summer. So we're all the things that fire loves. We are a fire-prone climate. It is needed and necessary, actually, for a lot of regenerative reasons for our plants. So we live in this space, high fire hazard. We have to choose how to take our risk. So paradise, heavy forest. It's really hard. I think one of the best ways I tell people is after the campfire, nobody knew what to do. There was an army of people that wanted to help. And some people said to just like, paradise won't exist ever again. Like it's lost. You can even Google paradise and it's like, does Paradise, California still exist?
Mm-hmm.
And there's enough people that really wanted it to still exist and push hard for change. It was a disaster zone. There were 20,000 burnt down cars in the streets of Paradise. People, you couldn't even get down the street. So it took one person saying, well, we'll start by removing that one car. And they pulled one car out of the street and then they continued. And that was kind of the first step in our recovery, is the removal of all these cars. There was a significant loss of life, which we never want to just roll by that.
Right.
And it was an mostly elderly population who could not get out or didn't have help. And then on top of that, a significant amount of animal loss, pets. People had left for work and could not get back home. Pets, wildlife, really just a huge loss of life beyond, and then you have the homes and all the things. It's just, you're not just losing a home, you lost the community as a whole. You lost, where do you go if you are, have a big loss? If you lost your home in a fire, you go to your aunt, uncles, your parents, your friend, your cousin, but they had also lost their home. So there was nowhere for anyone to go. Pre-Paradise, beautiful, quiet retirement community, massive devastation that no one had ever seen. And then you come, now, and it's still the essence of Paradise in every way, but we're trying to reinvent ourselves into being a safer, more resilient community. And we've also recognized what we were missing this whole time was our incredible canyon views. So we lost all these trees and it just opened up these extraordinary views, which I think we were always supposed to have. So it's finding the beauty in, the devastation. I could see the opportunity. As much as I wanted to help, I could see the opportunity of the community as a whole, for myself, for my children, a different place to live. So where the heart is still the same, we cannot do it the same as we did before. We'll land in the same position.
And you've had a major population shift with most people use Paradise as a comp for the LA fires, which makes me insane. But can you briefly speak to the demographic shift, changes in the schools, those sorts of things?
Yes, we were primarily an elderly community, a bedroom community. We're in a beautiful setting. A lot of people from the Bay and Sacramento saw this as a great place to retire, and it was and is that. And after the fire, it's really shifted into a younger population. We went from 27,000 people to around 2,000 to 3,000 after the fire. We lost 90%. And now we're the fastest growing town in the state of California for over 3 years. We're at about 12,000. And it is definitely a younger community. We were primarily Caucasian, but we've opened the door to be able to allow all different, we have a lot of a high Hispanic population, Asian, just it's a new opportunity, a chance to bring in different cultures and diversity and things that, diversity can come in all forms, from ages to race, all the things. And we're able to bring that now. And it really is an enriching part of our community to see this shift.
It's been actually, I mean, I didn't know. I was only 13 months in. I didn't know much, at all. And I'm always having to learn as I go the entire time from all the people that I come in contact with. But I don't think I ever thought that Paradise wouldn't come back. But really, there's so many things to be proud of in the way that you are building a town. And it's so nice that last time I was there, like a year ago, like I could see so much more, like I could see actual neighborhoods forming, and it wasn't just the one house, one house, one house. And that was really heartwarming. And I'd like to people to also understand that, units of housing is not the measure of success. Units of housing is, it depends on what the community wants, and you can only serve the community in front of you. And it's really important that we respect what was there before and then with the direction the community wants to go in. And so you're also doing things like a major infrastructure project that will move the town. The entire town is on septic, that will move you off of septic and into a sewer system, which you've not had before. And it's a really big deal for growth and for sustainability at the same time. So I'm excited for you. So Valerie, would you mind talking about, I know we talk about this a lot internally, but when people want to layer Paradise and LA together, can you talk about why that's not a comp, or why fires in general? It's hard to comp them, but you've just seen all of them.
Yeah, and it really just boils down to the community in general, right? Paradise is a rural area. They have different challenges. You have to think of, labor coming in from other areas, materials, all of that. LA is it's a port county. It has resources there, but also they have many more resources. I'm just going to say it that way. There are a lot more resources in LA than Paradise had. And while the Community Foundation and all those partners did tremendous work raising funds, and they were incredibly talented in leveraging the federal and state dollars to help them recover. It looks very different. 90% of the town was destroyed, not just the homes, the town. So there was no infrastructure. It looks more like the Dixie Fire, right? You have to think in those terms. It is devastating. And while when you drive through Altadena or Pacific Palisades, there's a lot of business missing. 15 minutes away, there is still Pasadena, there is Santa Monica. And so it looks very different, but also the challenges there are different because these homes the topography is actually a little similar. I'll say that's one of the few things that carries, right? It's just a perk of California. We have incredible views, nice slopes, and then those are creative challenges for foundation work, for flooding, and also for wildfires. They just increase your risk. And those outside of those pieces, they're apples and pineapples. And Paradise really is that apple of they're making incredible work out of what they've got. And LA is this big juicy pineapple with all these resources. And I mean, it's incredible working in that space because you've got financial institutions and mortgage companies and all of these players saying, we're going to create stacks of equity for you to use. And that doesn't happen anywhere except, I'd say Colorado with the Marshall Fire, right? That's one of the few places where I've seen government additional resources come in and layer over people to help people who have some, right? Those have somes who had insurance actually get home. Yeah. Because a lot of times, I mean, Jen, I don't remember how many hundred I know it was more than 100 volunteer rebuilt homes. And certainly there will be a number of those in Altadena area for the Eaton Fire. But there are so many more people who have insurance because a lot of our folks in Paradise did not have insurance. They were retired. They own those homes outright. And especially when you're trying to layer over what's going on with the LA fires and saying camp is the marker, that is night and day difference. The preponderance of insurance is going to be what gets more people home.
And also the percentages make me insane. I'm just going to complain a little bit. Like, why in this recent report that I had to write a report about the reports, like, why are we looking at the Marshall Fire is one thing. It's 1,108 homes. And yes, they were 85% rebuilt in 3 years. And I love that for them. no issues, no shade whatsoever. Some very talented people in that fire. But you can't compare 18,000 structures to 1,100 and give me a percentage and then tell me that one is falling behind the other. And I get so frustrated by this, and I know that it takes a lot of nuance, and I know that people need context, but I do wish that they would consider more so not comparing them as though they are the same, and also though not throwing shade to Paradise either, because
Right.
you all have worked your booties off, and it has been a labor of love, and you are actually moving the market for other people. They are using your gravel grant in Los Angeles right now through GER3, right? And they are using the housing plan library in LA right now through a couple of different programs, most notably Foothill Catalog. And so I guess I get a little protective because I've seen it since day one. I was up there 10 days post disaster, and I've just seen how hard people have leaned in to making it. I think it's something to admire and not stress about the percentages. Make me insane.
Right. When you're looking at it, there in any wildfire, you're going to find a sliver of something that's applicable to, the 2020 CZU fire in Santa Cruz. Topography and foundation challenges mirror what's going on with Pacific Palisades, in the upper areas. But the other lesson that carries over is the impact and destruction of 3 small municipal water districts, right? Privately owned, not municipal. And so you have to rectify that before people can start rebuilding. And so that's another layer on. And that's just one piece, right? 2 snippets from that fire apply to 2 different fires. And you can't do a layover that's a blanket. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It's the wrong measurement. Yeah, it's the wrong measurement.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because why are we measuring it in numbers and percentages? Shouldn't it be measured in how we are choosing to come back more resilient, perhaps bringing back something that was lost in our culture, like Lahaina, perhaps in Altadena, bringing back the African-American population in a greater way and home ownership there? Shouldn't those be our measurements for Paradise? Our goal isn't to bring back the same population. And as much as we want many of those people to return that lost, the truth of it is we need new people to grow and have our economy come back because of what we once were. So that looks totally different than Lahaina and Altadena, even the who we want to come back and the how. So, I wish media and, they would look at they would do a report that says, how is Paradise coming back? Are they building back smarter? Is that should be it. Look at Lahaina. Oh my gosh, they're going to restore all their freshwater ponds that once were. And so it's such a bizarre way to measure. And then it just is they're only X percent recovered. And it does not capture our recovery in any sense, shape, or form.
It doesn't. And it also, the thing that's hard about recovery is you got to get up every single day. You got to do it again. And then as soon as you got it down, it's going to change a little bit. You got to work together. It's by nature. It's a collaboration. And we have this big network of all the people doing it. And that makes me really proud for all the mega fires. I love that piece of it. And there are things that we all find in common for our communities. But we do ourselves a huge disservice and we just try to layer it all over. And instead of just going to Paradise and asking, what is your measure of success for your community to get home? And in your case, you have to rebuild an entire town, and you have to do it in a way that it didn't look like that before. So you're not just trying to get back what you had, but you need to do a totally different sort of trajectory in order to have a town that thrives. And so I want people to understand that. But I have a question for you about that specifically. What is the effect when you have a major motion picture of somebody with the Lost Bus, and you have somebody like Matthew McConaughey, reenacting this true story, even though it's not exactly true how it was portrayed, but close enough. Does that revive interest, or did you guys feel a bump from that, or what's the effect on that for the town?
That is a really good question. I think we all were a little cautious going into it because we didn't know the effect, right? We don't know. We definitely don't want anybody in our community to be taken advantage of in any way, shape, or form, especially when they're depicting children in a movie. We wanted to protect our community, especially those that this was a reflection of. And I would say, but at the same time, we are all very grateful for our story to be continued to be told, because we are not done recovering. And so, using it as an opportunity. And in that, I watched the movie. I didn't go through the fire, and I was able to see they captured the terror of the day. And I think people outside of this community need to understand that. Matthew McConaughey and Jamie Lee Curtis, they didn't just take that, and they gave back to our community in a very significant way. They are helping fund the remaining of our Hope Plaza, which is the memorial dedicated to those lost in the Camp Fire. And because of them, we are able to complete that project this year in just a few weeks. So, Hollywood, and they make money, we know this, but they have given back deeply and in a profound way to our community, honoring the lives lost and also rebeautifying an area that was burned down with, trees and a memorial now.
I love that. I think that's really important. I don't think anybody's made any motion pictures about the Tubbs fire, so I think you guys got it. I personally, I don't know that I can watch it, because those things. It took me a long time to even watch the documentary about Paradise, and I was haunted by the firefighter who left his wife in the morning, and she took the kids to school, and then they lost all communication for the next 8 hours, and he didn't know if his family had lived, and his family didn't know if he had lived. And I was just kind of distraught after that for so long. I'm not saying it's not for everybody. For some people, they're not affected by it. But even the Lahaina fire, that took me until maybe 3 months ago before I could watch a documentary on it. And so maybe in another 2 to 3 years, I can watch this movie, because people really do like the movie a lot. So,
I just can't do that.
It's not for everybody. It's definitely not. Most people in our town did not watch that.
But Jen Goodlin, you've incorporated what people went through in the recovery of the community. I mean, one of the things, the Hope Plaza that has the park behind it, it's when I was up there with you recently working on our pilot project, one of the things that speaks to me greatly is when you drive through the community, the walking path that was put in as a secondary evacuation route. And
Yes.
that's reflecting the reality of what people went through in a way that it just kind of eases a little bit of the pressure, right? If you want to come back home to Paradise, that the fears, the losses have been taken into account, and there's some extra resources put in there to help.
Yes, that's one of the many measures the town is taking to make our community safer, is sidewalks doubling as emergency evacuation routes. We're undergrounding all of our power poles. Just that alone, it looks better, and it's also much safer, and it eases people's mind. And we have our early warning system, which has now sirens every month to, let us know. I think, Val, you were at my house when the test went off. So that
did you know, Val?
She told me what it was, but I went to Oregon Coast Tsunami Alert, and it took me a second to connect what it was.
Yeah. So, Jen, what is the measure of success for Paradise then?
That's such a good question. I think one of our measurements we've used is the accelerated growth in our elementary school. So for us, we had the community as a whole thought it would be 10 years before we needed our second elementary school, which was lost completely to the fire. Well, we are at year 7, and we needed a new elementary school last year. So that is under full construction. It will be opening in the fall, and they are actually having to add a whole new building because the explosion of population. So even what they were projecting the need for this year has once again increased. So in the state of California, most school districts are declining in numbers. We are one of the only ones that is increasing right now, which I think is a great measure. You have these families coming back that would have never lived here, seen the opportunity. And it's not just humans is the core, right? That's what we care and love and need here. but we are also coming back much more resilient. And I think that should really be looked at, is how we're rebuilding. It would be rare to find a home in this town that has a wooden fence attached to it. And isn't that a huge success on its own? 90% of homes don't have a wooden fence attached. Where else can you, to me, that's
Nowhere.
a cultural
Can
shift.
literally
It's nowhere.
nowhere.
It's nowhere.
Yeah.
Isn't that a measure? It's just, that is another great measure of success. So success is in bringing back the humans and increasing your growth. And it's also coming back much more resilient. So we don't have this, I don't want this to happen to my kids. I want them to live in a safe town in generations to come.
I often feel like so much of our work is around reducing suffering. Like that's what we do for a living, very much so. So Valerie, how on earth have you done this for 18 years? I'm only 8 years in. So for you, in the reduction of suffering and and improving systems to make it better for people, like how have you stayed in, and what are some of your favorite innovations that have come around, especially in the last decade?
Yeah, I'll say, I'll start with, it's a group project, right? And so, unfortunately for me, after my fire, I did not get that memo. And I felt like the weight of the world and all of my friends and neighbors who had lost their homes was on my shoulders, right? I was supposed to come up with a solution because I was running that long-term recovery group. And that didn't work very well for me. I looked like a chia pet, lost half my hair,
Oh.
I got on a criminal grand jury and I thought it was a vacation, very warped perspective, right?
Yeah.
And going back into it for the next disaster, I realized that, my role was limited to being a support for the community in front of me, right? Because that's really what we're doing. We are always serving the community in front of us, and we are there to be an amplifier and a force multiplier. We have relationships we can leverage. We have resources, and so a lot of times I feel like a walking Rolodex. They're like,
you
I
are.
need this. Like, oh yeah, I remember this from 10 years ago. Let me dig this out, right? But the other part is just, turning it off, because once we're in recovery, the big disaster is over, right? So you have to learn to take care of yourself, put it in perspective, because once we're here, there's always going to be a crisis, but the big disaster has already happened, right? And so moving into that recovery phase and getting people moving back home and being resilient, you have to pace yourself. It's a marathon.
Marathon of sprints.
Yes, yes, and it's painful, but it's what you do, and then the best part of it, quite honestly, is the relationships you make. It really is.
It is.
That's the phrase you say, Jen. Say your phrase.
Oh, it's the worst club, best people.
Yes, and it truly is.
It actually, Jen, that's a really good segue into. So you've been to LA with us 3 times, and I know that you guys were helping for Lahaina from afar, but then recently you were able to actually go with us and see them 2.5 years post disaster. So in visiting LA and visiting Lahaina, like what about it strikes you as somebody who's been working in this very specific lane, this lane of paradise before?
It's actually very interesting. I've lived in our disaster, and the first thing is how totally different they are. That's what strikes me straight out the gates. And I step back and like 15 years, I think, how will we all look at these big mega fires, Paradise, Lahaina, LA? And my honest opinion is we'll all look and say that Lahaina did it the best. Because they know where they live, they have deep community and culture. You go there thinking you're going to get some information and you learn 10 times more. And you meet people that you would have never otherwise met ever. And they're incredible. And I'm like, what a gift to be in this kind of disaster world and then get to meet these wonderful humans in the middle of it all. So it's just, I take back so much information and knowledge. And And it's really beautiful to see how people are taking these disasters and making the most of them and making new friendships, relationships. And for me personally, it's so refreshing to walk into a space where everyone speaks the same language.
Yes.
Because this is extremely isolating. Disaster recovery is very isolating and hard work. And it's nonstop. And when you can go into a space where other people know and understand that, and then people within this space, specifically after the fire, come around you and meet you where you're at, not just in disaster, but in your own life. It's just like it's such a beautiful gift. It's needed. In Hawaii, I'll never forget a group sitting around a backyard saying, after the fire is the only people who gave us hope in all of this disaster world and recovery. And that is exactly like, Jen, it's not just them, it's us, it's me personally. Like, there's a way that you have shifted the whole world's idea of what recovery should look like, because you always put the community and the humans in it at the forefront.
Well, I love how I asked that question. It ended up being a really nice thing about us. But it is the most touching part of it. Like, we all have lanes and we all have things that we're going to do. Like, I don't build homes, right? We don't do that. But we do curate really cool people to come in who have a variety of experiences to lean in the moment that people need them. And there has to be a softness to it. There has to be something gentle to it, so that they also know that if they're not ready for the information right then they don't have to take it right then. And they also know that we're not just there we're not there to extract from them. We want to add to them, and it can be on their timeline is totally fine. It's totally different for different places. And I respect that. There are some places where they want a very light touch, like the Dixie Fire wanted a lighter touch. And there are other places like LA, which basically wants the grind, and that's totally fine. And, I spent a lot of time in Paradise the first year or two. And I feel like every time we walk into those situations, I'm always amazed at how much we learn. You come out of it with like a whole new layer of understanding and so much respect for the human beings that are actually getting up and getting this done. Like, I will never tire of talking about that. Or Casey Taylor, who, is on your founding board, and she's also the founder and superintendent of Achieve Charter Schools. And so whenever the other fires happen, like, she's really first to volunteer to go to help. And she's helped LA so much, but she was on our first delegation to Maui as well. And so I appreciate you saying all that. That was one of the most moving days of my life when we were all sitting there in that circle. And it was really hard for me not to just say, okay, it's everybody in our network from after the fire who come and they volunteer their time and they show up for each other. And that this is what, in fact, we can do as a nation in many ways. Because when we walk into communities, like, we don't care how you vote. We don't care how much money you have. Like, none of that actually matters to us. We'll pull that information for demographics. But we're always going to see first as somebody who just survived something really horrible that happened and totally upended your sense of reality for where you live in your home. And so I'm so grateful that you were there for that and that you could see it. Because I think sometimes when you work in one disaster for a long time, like, it can be hard even to hold hope. And then you realize when you bring it to somebody else that you do have something to offer them. Like, I love it when you talk about your garden, Jen. Can tell everybody what you talk about your garden, because these are the human stories that actually make people be able to relate to not only where we've been, but where we need to go.
Yeah. So it's always funny to me when I hear the argument about zone 0 being zone ugly, because I love to garden. I have a big cut flower garden in my own yard. So I just kind of like can giggle in the background. Like, this is the opposite of the truth. I have zone 0, and I also have lots and lots of beautiful flowers. It's both, but it's also, the growing of flowers is also for me very healing to watch something. We had utter destruction. I lost over 100 trees on our property have been lost from the fire. And so when you're able to watch something be restored after such significant loss, it's very healing, like, personally, to have your hands involved in that. I've watched it with other community members as well. So it's just a beautiful gift to be able to garden. I think it's important And I would love for people to recognize, if I could tell like Lahaina or LA, one thing it was we were never told not to plant by our house initially. And now, 7 years later, people who did that are having to remove their plants, and it's another loss, and it's expensive,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to go through another loss. So it's just the best of both worlds. I love gardening. You can see it all over my Instagram.
So Jen, obviously gardening is a big part of your strategy for how you keep yourself well and balanced and happy. But, the work is a grind. And so can you talk about some of the challenges that you've had over the past, has it been 5 years? I think it's been 5 years you've been at the helm. And
Yes.
how you get through that, or the frustrations, or what works for you?
I came in so innocently, like with a heart to just love and serve our community, not realizing that not everyone appreciates what you do in the same way, or maybe your methods of how you get it done. And so, you go full force, you're bringing impact to your community, you're doing things maybe a little unconventionally, and loving and serving. And not everyone's going to like when you do things, the way you do things, or the impact that you have. And so that's been extraordinarily difficult for me personally, even for our foundation, to have some personal attacks. Really people not realizing what they're doing is actually hurting the community as a whole. And so it has been challenging for me as a people pleaser, as stepping into the footsteps of someone so incredible like Charles Brooks, to learn how to find my own path. I wear different shoes than Charles. I often say, it was very intimidating walking into the space and everyone comparing me to him. And I just had to say, he is great in his own way, and I'm a different person. I wear leopard shoes, okay? So, and not everyone likes my leopard shoes. And that's okay. I've had to really just be okay with not everyone liking it, and always remembering my why. Why am I in this space? And my why, my gold star, is for the betterment of our community. And that is where our decisions come from. They're never my decisions alone. They're always backed and supported by my board. And so I really, surrounding yourself with that group of people who support you is extraordinarily important. That you're not making decisions alone, so that people can't just pick on the one person. And just actually, even outside of your own small community, the support of other people is really helpful. That can give you tools, encouragement, things that you might not have or know, wisdom that you might not have otherwise known, or maybe they've been through similar experiences of being harshly criticized.
And it can be hard as for women too, to step into their leadership totally and unapologetically too, and to say like, I'm going to trust my own opinions, like I'm going to ask, they're going to be educated, or my own decisions. But I think especially because we are constantly like told to be nice, for people to like us. And then when they don't, or they make stuff up about our motivations, because there are, most people are pretty cool, but there's a group of people who absolutely cannot believe that other people do things without a major transactional nature to it. And instead what their payoff is the impact. It's not in the form of a commodity. So I think that's a hard one it's hard. So Valerie, talk about your own leadership too, because I think that you've been in it so much longer.
Yeah, and I will say, getting out of San Diego County and interacting with the rest of the state and the country was eye-opening for precisely what Jen was describing. It's in that VOAD world, we're supposed to collaborate, communicate, cooperate, coordinate, and yet there's competition, and there's, chaos, and there's criticism, and I started with after the fire and SPP the day before the LA fires. So I had this one perfect day of onboarding, all these hopes and dreams of what I was going to do. I was ramping down from the organization I was with before. And then suddenly they needed me because the fires were in SoCal. I was their anchor there. And it became a lot. And I was so busy focusing on getting people what they needed and doing those right things that I missed in my leadership the comments and the criticisms and the negativities until literally Jen, you and I sat in the lodge in Pasadena, and someone loudly under their breath, who should have known better, said, "Well, what hat is she wearing today?" And I was there to serve, right? I was there to serve, and yet, and thought I was giving good information. And yes, I was known as a kid as Encyclopedia Brown. I did read the encyclopedia through as a kid. I got the Rolodex thing in the head, and
I call her our Swiss Army knife.
Yes, and I am all of those things, right? And it's usually a plus, but for some reason in this last year, it turned into me being helpful, which usually in other disasters has been fine, turned into I was competing or putting myself above other people or positioning, and it was not very helpful. And I'd seen this in other disasters in other parts of the country. I didn't expect it here in my backyard. And there was a reckoning. I put some people on notice. My kids know me as the evil mother lady. Most of my coworkers laughed at me. Most of my friends laughed at that name, right? I have the email. I own the domain name. There was a reason I had it, right? 3 daughters, 36 Girl Scouts, that politely, furiously, Mama Berry. And people saw that come out, and they didn't know what to do with that, because I'm not here. The work is too important. The people in front of us are too important for them to get misinformation and mistrust and miscommunications that hold them back. That's not what we're here to do.
It ends up harming the community. And I think, and it was very kind of you with your former organization to continue to do stuff for them for a number of months so that they could have a more solid footing there. Like, I thought and it was really hard because we were working 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week on top of that. And you do the VOAD. And for people who don't know what VOAD is, we said the acronym earlier, but can you explain the system of it, though?
Yeah. So VOAD, the Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, it really is. It's a 50-year-old organization that basically created a sandbox with rules for the nonprofits and the faith-based organizations across the country to not step all over each other and instead serve the community in front of them. That's really in a nutshell what it is, right? And we had let me start by saying I don't think people came in with bad intentions. I think the disaster was for them so big, so scary that everyone just kind of became hyper vigilant, and they were not their normal selves, right? People were acting not typical behaviors, but it created the situation where there was a lot of stress, and a lot of that stress and drama got put on the community in front of us, and that was not helpful. And so, to go back to what you said earlier, Jen, we know what we know, right? I know 25 fires, a couple of hurricanes, a couple of tornadoes, right? I know what I know, but I don't know anything about the neighborhood I'm walking into, and I only know what I know about fire, but it might not be applicable for that community. And so we really do have to come in with that humility of spirit and be, servant leaders serving that community in front of us. And yet people, kind of step all over each other. And not just in the VOAD space, but also just the normal nonprofits, because everybody wants to help, but they don't know necessarily how to help, which is why VOAD has that structure of long-term recovery, which gives you the sandbox with the rules so that everybody can help in a meaningful manner. But
I think you nailed it, though.
Out of that space,
isn't it, though? It's nice, but I think you did nail it, though. That the LA fires in particular were very demanding, and that's fine. We're not complaining at all, but certainly a test of leadership. Yes. all across the board, and a test of the value of collaboration, which is very valuable. And, I think because there was so much attention and then all these resources pushed on it, that it did create a hyper competitive zone for some of the nonprofits. And I think that the thing that we would all like when we walk into a fire is for the people who do this all the time is not to bring our own drama into it. And that was a hard thing. And I think everybody got really tired we were just all working a lot and getting tired.
I will say with that, my first delegation after the LA fires. That was the first time I felt the care and keeping of me that happened. We went to Pacific Coast Highway, and we were across from the fire station, and that was like my Zen drive for the Woolsey Fire and for other stuff. Santa Cruz, I would just drive the one up, and it was gone. And that was really hard. And then there's that smell that, that you just can't. You hit it, it triggers. It's very bad. And for me, I'm just, trying to keep myself together. And it was so lovely to have people who were traumatized themselves, right? From the delegation coming up, checking, making sure I was okay. They had a game plan. They're like, here's some lavender, put this on your mask, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't feel alone then. And I had been, part of what you said, it's really lonely work. And yet in our work, we're not alone. And I appreciate that so much.
I do too. I think it's really so much of our secret sauce is just really kindness is a strength, and trying, and then putting people in places where we think they're going to be successful and we know they have something to offer. We're not trying to micromanage them. That's not it at all. But it's making sure that we're watching out for each other, but using kindness as our superpower. And I think I have seen a shift in the market of disaster more towards that, sort of like this idea that you could go in and serve the community in front of you, and that we actually can't get through this unless we collaborate together and use all of our best minds. Like, I don't need to know everything about insurance because you two are on it, right? Ralph Bloomers is on it. I just need to amplify and provide opportunities for you to share your gifts with other people who at the time where they really need them. And that's really, so much of it's not that complicated, but it's a little hard to pull off when it's not a traditional model of service post-disaster. So, well, I know we're here at an hour, and I wanted to say that thank you both so much. I love working with you. I know I'm looking forward to the toolkit. I know we're going to do more things, and I feel a very special place in my heart always for Rebuild Paradise and the town of Paradise and all of the gifts that you all are giving to the world. And then, Valerie, I feel very honored that you came to work with us and that we could have this wonderful partnership with SBP too. So thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jen.